Maybe, if you want to just tell us a bit about your background, like who you are for the people out there. And...
Yeah, well, first, brother, I'd like to say, Yagali Manaba, Yinibara Jawan. Come in, welcome to Yinibara country, and officially welcome you here onto my country, my home country. Yeah, my name's BJ Murphy. I'm a Yinibara man, and I also have patrilineal connections to KabiKabi country and also Kuku Yalanji countries up in the Western Daintree. But we follow matrilineal culturally. So this country here, I can go back in Western documentation, five generations of direct matrilineal connection. But since time immemorial, realistically. So yeah, and this country here it's got 4 clan groups on it specifically. So where we're sitting now is Nalbo, which is my 5th great grandmother's country. So her name was Yanamalu, and so Nalbo. Then we've got Dala down the back, like Kenilworth way, and then down into sort of Kilcoy up to the Brisbane River, out the west to Waka Waka country. So we got that's Dungidao area, and then Garumna out the back. So sort of from the southeast of the Brisbane River back, Lake Manchester, and up until Mount Nebo and Mount Glorious, down to Yagara country. So it's about 700 square kilometres all up. But bit different to other mobs. We don't have Yinibara, like a Yinibara dialect. We're multilingual. So up here we'd speak a dialect of Kabi country, and then Dungidao and Garumna speak a dialect of Waka Waka. So yeah, we're I hate the term confederation, but it's like a governance structure. Yeah, so because up here we had the bunny gatherings, the big bunya cones, and had to be able to converse with many mobs and govern those big meetings where law took place and marriages and all that sort of stuff. So pretty special spot up here. Yeah, very special.
What's talking about the bunya nuts? Like a lot of people listening to this are from overseas.
Yeah, so I think you get over in Chile and stuff like that, you get monkey nuts. So they're all an Araucaria, so they're a conifer. So they've got a big pine cone, but they just get a lot larger. And they've got these, I'm hanging out for them, eh? They come around Christmas time, and next year's the big bump crop. So every 3 years you get a big bump crop, and that's when we'd have the gathering here, which is sadly flooded that area now by Baroon Pocket Dam. So where that dam sits is where all the mobs used to come in and meet up, and you'd have a mob walk down from Brockhampton.
Really?
From northern New South Wales. All the Bay Islands would canoe over and travel up, and out west, Warwick. So pretty big, significant area down there that sadly flooded. I refer to it as flooded memories now, but probably lots of memories under that water down there.
And that the bunya nut is it still a commodity? Is it like a food? Is
no, it's definitely still a food, and it's I guess it was a commodity back then, but not in the sense of what Western structural systems would have. There is people talking about it because they're a beautiful nut. They're like a water chestnut. I love them boiled. Some people like them roasted, and then you got all those fancy ones now that do bunny nut pesto and all that sort of stuff. Basically anything that potato goes good with, bunny nuts will too. So, but you can also roast it and make a flour out of it. And, there's been talk of it, over the years of, commodifying it. And I could never bring myself to do it. But there's also that side to it where, people say, well, if you don't, someone else is going to, and I think I've just sort of sat with it and just accepted that, if that's what happens, sadly, that's what's going to happen. All I can do is my best to prevent it from being commodified to that point. But yeah, it's one of them things where, like, you know, we see these trees as like big matriarchs and, you know, ancestors, and, you know, it's even documented. You know, we used to lop the branches sort of right up to the top of them, and you got bigger, juicier bunya cones, but the kids would cry like for up to 2 weeks if you cut them branches off, because it's, you know, seen as you're like harming,
And
you
that
know,
the
an
children would
ancestor.
actually
Yeah,
cry.
they'd cry over it. Yeah,
Huh.
yeah, but yeah, just trying to, in the grand scale of things, our biggest responsibility, you know, look after country, you know, and them trees there. I always say, like, everything matters and it's all equal, but they're a huge part of our culture and our history up here. And you know, like when all COVID broke loose and everything, I was like, everyone's like going into the shopping centres, you know, and it's all wiped out. And I was like, we got heaps of bunya nuts, we're right. Like, you know, it's just not all of that really matters.
Is that, you know, when we talk about from an Indigenous point of view about what it is in terms of like preservation, like we're walking down to where we are right now before talking about like the dingoes. There's some dingoes out here and that people want to kind of eradicate them from this area. What is it like, how could people potentially, you know, like have a different perspective on what is conservation? Like, you know, when we talk about everything is connected, like what does that mean?
Yeah, it's I think it's really tricky it's an individual thing, so it's really tricky to get people to, you know, understand what's important and what being connected to country is, you know, and I'm not a fan of the term. I feel like it's sort of like a trend at the moment, like something that comes and goes, which I'm worried about. But, you know, like the term being woke, you know, people sort of, you know, dive down these rabbit holes, but it is self-educating. They'll always take something from someone to plant that seed normally to get people on that journey, but educating yourself, you know, and I think what it all boils down to really is learning and understanding the colony. Once you're aware of what all this is and what's happening, you can then try to understand it. And from what I've come to realise personally, been a 12-year journey for me, is that there's too many sheep, sadly, and I can't change the mindset of, what do we got in Australia, 8 million, I think, people. So all I can do is live and lead by example and try to find my balance in it. I've tried fighting the system, you know, I've tried, you know, being an activist and sticking up for country. And sadly, at the end of the day, doing my bit culturally does still raise awareness, but at the end of the day, it still ends up being handled at a square table instead of a circle. So that was a tough pill for me to swallow in accepting that, and we'll probably yarn about that a bit later on, but you know, for me that big moment was the quarry fight. But you know, handing stuff over to the native title body, so like people get I think up north they get land what's the term? So I think of the land. Anyway,
Parcel leases?
Yeah, well, we down here we got native title here.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a different term for some other places. But yeah, it still gets handled, you know, in the Western system at the end of the day. And interesting enough, like I'm very much a sovereign man at heart, you know, and I just do what I can do for country, and I actually get more done, I think, and have more impact in looking after country by just doing what I do, you know, as an individual, than what I do in participating in the native title and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, the quarry as an example, like had I not done what I did, no one would be aware of what's going on down there. But now that fight's getting settled, hopefully getting settled, in courts through the Western system. But because I'm not a part of the native title body, I'm a member, but I'm not very active in that. The legislation, they won't share with me what they're doing around the table because of legality purposes. And it's just like, you know, like if it wasn't for me jumping up and down and my mum jumping on board, they'd still be blowing it up down there without a care in the world and no one to confront them on it. But, you know, having to accept that and just hope that, and that's what I'm doing. I'm waiting to see just how much pull native title has in that system to stop them from, you know, the harm they're doing to country. But yeah, this whole getting woke, and you just got to learn what's happening and understand it. And I think COVID helped a lot of people with that. It put people back at home, pushed them out into their backyards, and they got a little reality check, you know, of what was real and what's really important, and just how much they can just switch that big switch off and stop the machine, you know. So there was a lot more people I found, you know, since then and now, just yarning on country to people that are more, you know, aware of you know, what's happening and what it is. And all I do is encourage them to just stay on that path and then try and find their balance. That's my only advice to them, is to find their own balance.
It's kind of like empowering yourself in that way, empowering your community by doing your own work.
That's right, yeah. I think it's that old, is it like the desiderata or something, like accepting the things you cannot change, you know? And that was like, I used to read that on my mum's wall in the house, but, you know, now thinking back on that and I've said those words, you know, I'm like, well, I can't change it, so I've just got to accept that, you know? And that's, as a countryman, you know, it's, that hurts. That really hurts, not being able to say no and then someone listen to you and stop. Yeah, it's a no, and then they say, yeah, but, and then it ends up in a big fight in the courtroom. So it's just, yeah, it's a hard big pill to swallow.
I like that what you said before, that point about solving those issues in a circle, not at a square table, and how that ability to be in a circle enables us to flow. There's no corners where we hit obstacles, and there's legalities, and everything that's a square in the Western system always has issues, like a square bed, a square TV, and everything in nature is in a circle.
And that's all I try to do now, is try and find my balance in it all. I mean, like, even this yarn today, I thought could be sitting in a room or a library somewhere in a soundproof room doing it, and I'm just like, for me and my balance and, to keep my cup full, it's out on country. And, so...
and I agree with you, I prefer to do this podcast on country in nature. How important is it for individuals to connect to country? Like walk barefoot on the earth, drink water, like breathe the air, like take the sun in, like light a fire. Like what does that do for an individual?
Yeah, for us, for me even, I grew up assimilated for many years, had no idea, and it wasn't until 2012 I got handed my grandfather's transcripts and dove down that path of learning who I am and where I'm from, and over that last 12 years now, I spent 5 years of that, going on 6 years, just solidly, walking country, walking riverways and everything. And everything just sort of falls into place. And I think you find your place in the world, and that's when you start sort of like that getting woke, you start seeing what's important. But also with that comes all that heart pain, because that's when you learn in the colony and what their agenda is, and then what's important and what you've got to do, and it clashes. And that's why I always say, like, find your balance, because you can't change it, and like for me the way forward is actually backward. It was only yesterday I was arguing with this old fella. He's going, we need to go back to steam, and I said, why can't you just walk? You're still going to be extracting coal. You're still over extracting country. It might not be as bad as cars or whatever, but, I said, why can't we just walk everywhere? Even as kids, you walked up until you're 18 and never died. Like, just walk to the shops, just go walk about. But once people slow down, which is really hard, that 9 to 5 and screens and screen time and all that, it's really difficult. But I think when people can, I call that the disconnect. And you're connected when you're walking country and listening. But
in society, you're seen as kind of lazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Or you're disconnected. Yeah. So I got a brother there, and we always walk country. At least once a week we'll be out walking somewhere, and he'll pick his phone up out of his pocket, and then I do that stupid Siri voice and I go, disconnected. But he gets me sometimes with it, but it's good. We can remind each other, to just be in the moment, and we're out on country, and put your phone down. Bit harder for the kids. I've got kids, and my boy is 16, he lives with me, and, to peel him away from the PlayStation and get him down here for a walk, to look at some birds or whatever. But through my journey in finding that balance, I've learned to find things. So for them, it's that digital world at the moment. Well, they're stepping into AI now, they're moving quick, but it was through using my camera that I noticed he was then connecting to country because he was taking photos of stuff. And when he's running around with that digital camera clicking away, he doesn't realise he's learning the trees, he's learning animals, he's learning country. So, he's miles ahead of me as opposed to where I was at 16. I think I was like a little punk rocker and wanted to ride push bikes everywhere. But
Do you feel like a lot of people want to know, like, what do I have to do? And I always tell people that I work with, like, create a space, and Beyond Country allows that. And you're just going to have an opening, and whatever you're going through, you're going to be able to process it in an organic way.
Yes.
Like, it's not about, there's nowhere to get to. And you're saying before about like society, it's a race or you've got to get somewhere, and it's just about contemplation or being still,
Slowing down. I try to encourage everyone to slow down and listen to country and walk country and that 9 to 5 jobs, house. It's you can't take it with you. It's not, that's their system and that's their way, and it's just, as COVID shows, it's just not as important. And for me, it's hard. I always say for me, because we can't really talk on behalf of other mobs and whatnot, but for me personally, I've always found that inner responsibility for country and for flora and fauna has always been a really big thing within me and within my spirit. And it's only gotten stronger, I guess, the more I've slowed down and, connected with country. And I try to get as much as I can. I try to challenge the system, challenge trends and the norms, and, whilst also being humble and holding space for people that are, they're on their own journeys, and not telling them which way to go or how to do it, because what works for me might not work for them. But I think the biggest step is to, put your phone down and go bush. I don't think there's anything more important than that. And, that Yinibara ceremony that I started down at the quarry, that was only 3 weeks, a little over 3 weeks, but I kept the fire going for 3 weeks. And I don't think I've listened to country so much. And you just start seeing more. And I even challenge, and again, being humble and each of their own, but this whole cacao and mushies and all that sort of stuff. I do it all sober, I just drink my water and eat healthy and go into ceremony, and stuff still happens without needing something to get you somewhere else. It's all right there. You just got to really stop and listen to it. And sitting there quietly every day, and we'd still come out of the circle and yarn and all that sort of stuff, but when you're sitting there and you're hearing the birds and hearing the big system, the big wheel turning, and I don't know, there's just something in that, that I don't feel people are slowing down enough to engage with in this day and age. And some never will, but
it's still like using those plants to try and get somewhere, and not using them in a way that to be still, and that understanding that you can do that with that, but you can do it, especially in Australia.
Yeah.
Be still here.
Yes. As I said, everywhere's different. Different mobs have different things. But that was just something I think I had to maybe challenge within myself, coming from growing up assimilated in the city to being skeptical about my own culture. Maybe that was a part of it, but challenging stuff like that there was a moment up on this sacred mountain. I've got a camp spot up there, and it's just way up out of the way of everything. And I was up there, I wrote a new song, and I was singing this new song, and I was talking to these ancestors, and we had a lot of ancestors buried around this mountain, putting stone crevices and covered up and stuff like that. And the name of this place means sacred place. And so I went up there and I said, people go to church, they pray, they have their religions. If this country, especially this area, if this is our church, if this is like our religion, this culture is what we do, show me. And I said that I'm not going to take mushies, I'm not going to do DMT, show me this is real, and I'm singing and I'm clapping away on my clap sticks, and I had this real quick cut come from behind me, and it just went, like that, straight past me, my ear, right next to me. It was loud enough because I was on the clapstick singing to be that loud that I actually jumped and shit myself a little bit. And I spun around. I was like looking in the grass and all that sort of stuff, and I couldn't see anything. I thought maybe it was like a massive big cicada or something, you know, like there's these bugs that make that big loud vibration noise. And there was nothing there. I was like, oh, I finished the song off and I went over to the car. And when I'm in a place like that, I'll spin. We got this flat wooden tool, I guess you'd call it, an instrument. We call it a bull or a KabiKabi, and we spin that around. Some of them are really big and large. They're a dual. They're for ceremony purposes. Then there's this, I've got a little one that's just, we'd use it for calling out, or, you know, if the kids are out hunting or whatever and dinner was ready, it calls the tribe back together. And some places I'll go and I'll spin that around to, you know, call out to my ancestors and call them in as well. And I pulled it out, and as soon as I went to spin it and it made that sound just that little bit, I was like, holy shit, that was it. So I had a one cut, like a quick chop down, quick spin of a bull roarer right next to me in a sacred spot. And then I was like, shit. And then I unpacked it, because at first I was like ready to run. I was just shitting myself. I reckon if it was nighttime, I would have been gone. But it was the middle of the day. And as I said, completely sober and challenging my own culture to show me that this is it and this is what it is. And I was like, I asked for that, and that actually happened. And, you know, there's been moments like that where stuff like that happened, and it's just like, you know, this is it. This is what's important for me, and doing what I'm doing, and our dreaming and stuff like that. Like, even the word dreaming, that's a very light word for what our dreaming is. It doesn't really encompass that, you know. For that, our word is Mimbori, which is, it's documented as continual flow or source of or continual flow is what they translated that to in English by a German linguist. And you know,
but continual flow
encompasses everything: birthing, you know, birds, trees, water.
Would you say that it's like the continual flow of like the acts, the words, the actions, everything in the consciousness of your mob, you know, that's here, that's in like.
And it's all of that. The tangible, that's a leaf. The intangible, hearing that sound that I couldn't see, it encompasses all that. That's what Mimbori is. That's law. You know, if we had, I know they say Lore, but for me it's Mimbori. That word is just, that's what encompasses all of that. Yeah, so it was one of them things, and that dreaming as well, you know, like I've only had 3 real serious dreams, you know, visited by that old grandfather that left us those transcripts to learn all this, you know, and I'm really grateful that he did, you know, because sadly, due to mob being put in missions and then growing up displaced all over country for us, and I've really dug deep, but, you know, we've lost. Let me correct that. I don't think it's lost. I think I say it's dormant. It's out there, it's laying asleep. And until someone slows down enough to look in it and walk that path to bring it back, it's not there. So I've tried the last 5 years to be that person that does that, you know, and I always, every year I still learn something new, you know. I don't think I'm ever going to stop learning, you know, that sort of side to it all. I don't know everything. I know a lot, sometimes more than I give myself credit for, but trying to, after mob going through what they went through, like up here, 1842, it was just done. Everything just turned bad. And to bring it back as best I can, and always sharing. You get some mob or some people that'll hold it in their pocket and almost commodify it like they own that, you know, and that's not how it is. You know, you got to share, and, you know, these kids, like I try not to push it onto my kids, but I try to share it as much as I can so that they're aware of that, and so they don't have to go digging as deep or as hard as what I did, hoping that they can learn. And yeah, it was just those transcripts, the way grandfather documented them. I don't know if I like to think he did it intentionally, but you know, you never know. But there was many anthropologists and stuff like that around. He went and chose this gentleman, LP Winterbotham, and he was sort of new to the anthropological thing. And I like to think grandfather did that to take away that power relationship there, because you got, local historians and famous books like J.G. Steele's Aboriginal Pathways of Southeast Queensland. That's people's go-to book to find info. And J.G. Steele and that, they pushed mob hard for information, whereas Winterbotham didn't do that. He asked some questions and he got some answers. Sacred ceremony stuff, didn't document it because he didn't push for it, and there was that respect there. And, so I like to think that's why grandfather shared the way he did, and they documented it the way they did. And I always use our red ochre as an example. Our red ochre, he says, grandfather's document says, one thumb of this, thumb-sized stick of this red ochre can paint up to 100 men. And I was like, man, either that's got to be just some dots and designs, or that must really thin out and go far, that red ochre, And he says it's along the Stanley River. So 5 years ago, I was like, right, there's a Stanley River, chuck the canoe in, go walking. Man, that river goes for kilometres and kilometres all the way, joins up to the Brisbane River. So you're out there for days walking, scrubbing, climbing through lawyer cane and vines and stuff. But on that little journey, just looking for some bright red ochre, you're learning so much interconnectedness of animals and plants, and you're seeing nature move, and you're learning country. That was one thing I didn't used to give myself credit for, and still do sometimes, is seeing country, learning your plants and stuff. And now I can go, because I've walked so much country, I don't know all the botanical names they want and stuff like that, because there's this expectation from council and stuff that BJ's a culture man, he knows what's in that lake. No, I don't. You put a fence and a gate there, I don't know what's in that water. It's private property now. But I go and, from walking country, I can walk into some places and be with my mate Spencer, and I'll be like, oh, what's that plant doing? Now, that shouldn't be here, should it? And he'll go, good spotting. No, it's an invasive weed. It's from South America or whatever. And no, that shouldn't be here. And I don't know, but I know. And, that comes from kicking your shoes off and walking country and just being aware of what's around you and slowing down. And
So, talking about country, where we are right now, kind of the backdrop to where we are it's very amazing. First time I've been up here, the view is incredible. When you get up here, you just feel that energy straight away, and it just kind of hits you in a sense. Yeah. These mountains. We've been touching on it through this interview. For people out there, it's the Glass House Mountains on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, Australia. And maybe there's a lot more cultural kind of history or background that you could share. Yeah. What are those mountains? Yeah,
there are many things. They're mountains. The Bay of Juan, mountain country. They're mountains. They're a family. They're a story, they're a songline, they're waypoints for the Bundy gatherings. They're a lot of things, they're mountains. And I think 65 million years old, Biwa, and that is. So, yeah, they've been around to see a lot, they're mountains. So you've got Biwa is the mother, meaning highest point.
And that's Indigenous name, Biwa.
Biwa, yep. And then you've got, in KabiKabi dialect, you've got Tibragagan, that's a father, which I think it means biting squirrel. We call him, in our language, in our dialect, we call him Maidam, which means largest or biggest man of all. And then you got, near the quarry where we've been fighting the good fight, Crooked Neck in English, so Mount Kunaran in KabiKabi dialect, in our Dungidao dialect. Looking at him from the west, which means the same thing. We call him Wandawaring, which means neck crooked, but still Crooked Neck. And then the Tundabudla twins and Mount Kui and all the wild horse. But one big family, and mountains that we don't climb, and that's something I've been an advocate for many years, actually. Many years. We just knew not to climb them growing up as kids. I've done a lot of digging, trying to be, as I said, always be humble and hold space with the other person and find that story that they're wanting to hear, or that exact reason why not to climb them mountains. And so sadly that's lost. I don't know, maybe the ones that knew that exact story were the ones that were all poisoned at Kilcoy. You never know, but from all the digging I've done, it's just a known thing in community and mob. We just never did and don't climb them mountains. The only story I've heard of someone climbing that mountain from one KabiKabi man was the last time that mountain was climbed was only by initiated men, and it was when Captain Cook sailed up the coast and a smoke signal was sent from her as well. So such a major, event that was needed and necessary for someone to climb up there. The earliest documentation is, as we spoke on earlier, J.G. Steele's Aboriginal Pathways of Southeast Queensland, like 1930s or something. It's around that real early settlement date. Andrew Petrie. So Thomas Petrie's, it's another book, Thomas Petrie's Reminiscence of Early Queensland, but his father, Andrew Petrie, needed to see out to Durunda, which is today Woodford, and a local man took him to Biwa and said, if you go up there, you'll be able to see wherever it is you need to go. And he started climbing up, and like halfway up the summit turned, and the black fellow was down the bottom still. And he said, aren't you coming up? And he said, no, we don't go up there. No way. And Andrew Petrie went blind. So that's another saying is that you'll go blind also if you climb them mountains. Yeah, I had a mate working right at the base of it, and he blames his sight problems on needing glasses. He goes, it's because I used to work at the bottom of Biwa. But yeah, as mob, we never climbed it. That was my first real, I think, big time activist step into my culture and sticking up for country. Was my first camp there at the bottom. And, I think lots of people thought I was going to live there because though we've got native title, I'm a big fan of the Human Rights Act as well. So, Section 28, you can, as an Aboriginal man in Queensland, I can hunt, fish, live, practice culture, whatever. And if someone tries to remove me or whatever, that's an act against my human rights. And a lot of people thought I was basically just going to take over the park there and set up a camp and stay there, which wasn't the case. It took a lot of energy there that first big fight there, and in sharing and holding space and taking time out of me surviving in this big system to try to get climbers to slow down and be mindful of what they were doing and be respectful and not climb the summits. And they can climb and hike all around them, but it's just going up on the summits that they're not allowed to do. And it was just that was by Thursday. Like, let's just say I started Monday. I got in there before the weekend, but by Thursday I was burnt out, sharing the same stories, the same reasoning as to why not to climb, and hearing the constant, just that whole me and entitlement that was coming across from the majority of people who climb it. I had a few that listened and didn't, just simply out of respect. I had a few that ended up being me holding space with them and then listening to their stories and what they got out of climbing her, and it being, a real inside mental health issue that they needed to unpack with someone that I guess they didn't get in the system, but they got it sitting there with me. So I had a few of them choose not to climb them anymore. That seems to be the big reason why people climb, is for mental health. But yeah, that was my first big fight for country, and I guess in becoming an activist, and it was draining. It was really draining.
How many people would, like, in those 4 days, how many people you reckon came through?
I couldn't even count. One day there was, I think it was like the Easter weekend or something, long weekend, and it was just hundreds. Like, it was just out of control. And to be humble, because inside you're angry, right? Because they're not listening. So you got to acknowledge that within yourself and go, that's just a feeling. Don't let it get the better of you. You got to be better, and you got to try to get your point across, and getting angry is not going to do it. So, you're acknowledging your emotions as well, and trying to hold space for yourself whilst holding space with them, and be the bigger person. And when they come down, even the ones that just swore and frowned and scoffed, and when they come back, I said, glad you made it down safely, brother. Good to see you made it. And you're just like, even though they were just assholes to you, and just hope that was the planting of the seed. So,
I mean, just from up here, from looking at the mountains, they stand out so much that just straight away you think, like, that's pretty sacred. Like, maybe I should just be in awe of that. And for me personally, I mean, it doesn't draw me in any way to want to conquer it or climb it. I think there's something there in that colonial mindset still of wanting to, same as like in Uluru. wanting to like I've been to Uluru and just being there, it's energetically you can feel it.
It's enough.
Like, it's enough. It's like I respect this space. You know, I don't need to go up there.
Yeah. I think there's one moment that really stood out to me out of that week. One gentleman, he was in his 60s and he'd climbed it 56 times a year before. And I said, look, you know, congratulations, brother. You're probably the most person I've heard has climbed it the most and made it down safely. And that, you know, I'm real happy that that's for you, but I respectfully ask you not to. And he's like, you're going to close it on me, aren't you? You're going to shut it down, eh? And I said, look, yeah, I hope so. I hope you stay off the summits. We don't want you up there. Once you're on that mountain, you're our responsibility as well. Whether you think it, acknowledge it or not. If someone dies up there, we go into sorry business. We're sad that someone's died and it feels like it was our fault because we're still allowing this to happen. And he's like, oh, and then he like slaps me really hard on the shoulder. He's like an old Italian man sort of thing. He's like, hits me really hard. He's like, come on, brother. You got to come up. You got to come up. The view, the places you can see up there. And I said, brother, respectfully, I've been walking my country since I was a kid off and on, but the last 12 years, 7 years especially, I've spent out there. There ain't a place out from up there that you point to that I probably haven't walked. And he goes, oh, but the feeling, when you get to that top and you look at that feeling you get, he's like, come on. And I said, again, respectfully, I can't climb. I'm not allowed up there, but I get that feeling sitting right here in this dirty gravel car park, digging my toes here into the dirt where the casuarinas are. And I said, I get that same feeling. I said, how about you come walk with me and I'll try and get you that feeling you get up there that only lasts 10 minutes while you're up there, down here everywhere you walk. He agreed to it, but he never called and never come walk with me, sadly. But I think that was a little realisation for me as well in that moment, just how we see, feel and connect to country when we tell people to connect to country. And it's just, for us, it's not just a moment, you know, it's all the time, and it's our responsibility too.
Like, I think going back to what we were talking about before, it's good medicine, what we're talking about, like where people are taking that mindset of, I'm going to take this plant or this substance and get somewhere, or I'm going to climb that mountain to get somewhere. And it's like, you don't have to do that. Just
it's in here. Yeah, it's inside. Yeah, maybe they're just not listening enough.
I think so. They're not listening to you at least.
Well, just to themselves.
Yeah.
If they just, yeah.
What, besides that, I mean, yeah, I feel this is a good opportunity for people out there, especially people that live in this area, and to get some more like educational awareness. You know, I think everything for me comes down to education. If we can educate people.
Yeah, that's it. It all starts with, I think, a conversation.
Conversation, and then there's respect and understanding. And I know people have died, you know, climbing those mountains. Is there some other, you know, information or, you know, within your boundaries of what you can share from your culture that could, you know, help people make the right decision, yeah, from their heart, not from their head, in terms of climbing those mountains? It's
really hard. Like, I just put it down to respect. If you're not going to be respectful enough to listen, how's that meant to be full circle? Like, how are you meant to, the second you don't stop and unpack what we're asking, you just blatantly say that you're Australian and you're entitled to climb that mountain, right then and there's just no respect. And, you know, that's, if they go overseas, like if they were tourists overseas travelling and they weren't allowed to climb the mountains, I guarantee you they wouldn't climb that rope and climb the mountains. They wouldn't do it. But for here, for some reason, the respect goes out the window and it's not mutual and the entitlement's there and they just do what they want. So it's really hard, and it's like, it gets frustrating, and you just got to then, like myself, go for a walk and unpack it and let it go. If you can't change it right then and there. You can't make them, you can't force them. Nor do you want to. You know, you want them to be respectful enough to go, I hear you, I hear why, and I'm going to respect that. And then you can sit down and yarn and learn more about why. But yeah, too many just scoff and just go about their day, and it's really sad.
There's limited listening, and I think it's not that listening in a circle like we were talking about before. It's like people only really listening when it gets to that square table because of the system. Yeah.
And I get, like, there's many layers to it, but if they're not willing to sit through the first layer to get a better understanding, then sadly that's when you just got to go, okay, I hope you make it back down, because you know you're just talking to a brick. It's not gonna change. Yeah. And for them, like they'll say some things pretty quick off the cuff, like, oh, we try not to tie off on the trees and we bring our rubbish down. And culturally, like this tea tree that grows up there, Leptospermum lumini, that's the tea tree that only grows up on that mountain. It's a special type of tea tree. And they're climbing all over the roots of it and up and down it. And then some of them will say, oh, I don't hold on to the trees and stuff, you know, I just climb up. You know, the mountains are white underneath. That black colour all over them, that's a biofilm. There's a whole ecosystem you're stomping all over before you get to trees and roots and rubbish and going to the toilet. There's so many layers to it. You know, and then there's a cultural aspect, you know, so it's like, if you're not even going to listen to science, like, what's the point?
Yeah. Is there a track?
There's a big scar up and down. You'll see when we walk over. Yeah. And up Old Man's Back as well, from going up and down. And that's the thing, when it comes to the mountains and the hiking of them, the climbing, I should say. Hiking's fine around the bases. The summit climbs is what we're trying to stop. And there's no middle ground with climbers. I've tried. They're like, let's sit down, let's talk about it. I sat in ceremony, got permission from my elders to walk around Biwa because there's a birthing area there off to the side. So I had to sit in ceremony and get permission to walk around that. I hiked around her and I said, all right, we could. They could, if they were really, really careful. In partnership with parks, we could put a boardwalk over the spring and put a boardwalk and a hiking track around the whole base of her. Then they can do the Tibrogargan Trachyte circuit, they can do the Biwa circuit, link them up so they got the great walks, so they can do 5-day hikes and sleepovers. No, we want to climb. Where's our middle ground? Where do you meet us? Because they still want to climb stuff. It's, you know, and had newspaper interviews and everything. And the lady who interviewed me actually used to live down here in Diamond Valley. And I said to her, you can peel back the layers. I said, you know, you used to own a house in Diamond Valley. She's like, yeah. I said, heaps of rock faces and gorges along the front there that's not sacred and you can go and rock climb. But someone come over and put 4 picket posts in the ground and fenced it off and said they own it. And now that's private land, so people can't climb there. I'm like, do you see where I'm going with this? Yeah. And she's like, yeah. I said, there's many layers to it. But
do you want to talk about the quarry?
Yeah, the quarry. Oh, I sat with the quarry for a while. It's funny. So this started from my...
Or just start with explaining people what, I mean, was the quarry, but
yeah.
People out there. You know.
So just a brief overview. There is a Hansen under Heidelberg. I have a quarry at the base of Mount Crooked Neck. And it's been there since 70, I don't know if it's 72 or 78. They've been going for it. It's been through a few hands, few contracts. But they recently put in a development application to double the take. So from 60 tonne to 1.2 tonne a year. You know, so double the extraction. So they're taking out, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of trachyte in there and rhyolite. But yeah, so it's all road-based, gravel, and then the bigger stuff, the bigger rocks and boulders that they use for like edging the beaches and preventing erosion and stuff like that. It falls on Yinibara country, even native title-wise, though it's right on the boundary. So Old Gympie Road, because the Western system likes to have that hard line in the sand. Old Gympie Road is the boundary there, and yeah, it falls on the Yinibara side of the boundary as well in native title. So double the extraction, double the trucks in the area. You know, that's like a truck every minute and a half up and down the road where there's schools and local residents. Silica was my first thought, even like health-wise. You know, putting aside the cultural flora and fauna stuff, I was just like, there's going to be silica. So, yeah, my first thought, you know, I went, all right, cultural business aside and flora and fauna, like, there's going to be silica everywhere they're blasting, you know, and that was my first, oh, God, what are we going to do about this? During my protest camp at Biwa, I was drawn to Crooked Neck as well. And it wasn't until Uncle Alan Parsons rang me up and he said, oh, check your emails. I sent you something through. Have you heard about this? And then he sent it and I was like, I knew something was coming. Like that feeling you get and you just know. And I was like, oh, I knew I was drawn to that mountain for a reason. And we got history, me and that mountain, but I was trying to film a anti-climbing video and I was trying to show the beauty of the mountain. And magnetic interference from the basalt and the stone took a $2,000 drone I'd borrowed off a mate. So I was $2,000 in the red for an anti-climbing video. That drone went down and I couldn't go up there and get it, and I was just like, he got me. He likes his privacy. But yeah, so I knew something was coming, and I looked into it and I just thought, I'm only one person. What can I do to raise awareness, throw a spanner in their works, just raise awareness on what's happening and how can we stop it? The only real thing that I see as I guess a power play, for better lack of the word I'm trying to think of, it's where I had some control over what was happening with what I was doing to raise the awareness on this place. I knew that by me camping there, them not being able to remove me would rattle their cage a bit and get the community talking and bring about the awareness for what was happening there. So and I sat with it for a while because I sort of knew what I was in for now after the anti-climbing protest. You know, I knew I'd get drained. I knew there was going to be newspaper articles and news crews. So I spent a good 6 weeks prior, even in my head, visiting, you know, Crooked Neck, pay my respects to him, walking around the back of their fence line where Crooked Neck is, sat through my first blast over the back, you know, which Brett got on film, because hearing about it is completely different when you're sitting there and feeling your country being blown up. And that was something that I, after that first blast, before I even set up my camp, and I was doing, I guess, like a recce, you know, it's just sort of looking at where I was best suited for camp, where I would have the most impact in raising awareness for this. I messaged Coods straight away up at Watanungu, and I just said, brother, I thought I respected you before as a brother and what you're doing, but after sitting through a blast, I said, do they blast up there every day at Adani being such a big mine? And he said, yeah, they do. And I sorry for the language, but it fucking tore my spirit clear out my chest. Like, I felt that all the way to the pit of my stomach. And all I envision when they blow up there, and I still do, is they're basically blowing up his feet, you know, like that's the footings of that mountain. And when you sit through a blast, it's like they've strapped dynamite to his feet and they're blasting his feet. And then, unbeknownst to me at that time, a month later, I'd be watching them basically hauling his feet, like his toes, out in trucks to go and prevent soil erosion and stuff like that, you know. And I was like, oh, this is gonna be hard. You know, like I was like, this is gonna be tough. And but I had my little camper, and it was, you know, I slowly chipped away and set it up by myself with the odd jobs I do, and it's completely little off-grid camper, you know, with a little shower and everything. I had everything but a toilet to camp comfortably and bunker down for as long as I needed. And that's what I did. And set up camp there with my partner Jasmine, and we just bunkered down and started the Facebook posts and started raising the awareness, and got to know the locals within the first week, you know, who was in support of it, who wasn't, found out who was renting their houses up the road because they'd go screaming past in their cars being as loud as they can. And the thing for me was also being able to not be drained myself so that I could still focus on what was happening there. And that was why I chose a Yuma ceremony, a deep listening ceremony. So Yuma means quietness. And I thought, by creating this space, I can have a space to go to be left alone and be quiet too. So if it gets too much, that's my safety net there, that's my safe zone. And because initially I was going to bring the borer ring back. There was a borer there, but it was across the road under the shed in the Cobb and Co. But to move a borer, it's not a good thing, really. They line up with the stars. So a borer ring is where we'd practice ceremony and corroboree and dance. And it's a pretty significant spot. It's just a big ring, about 20 foot, 25 foot diameter ring.
And it's under
it's it's under a shed now, or it's been paved over. We've lost a lot of them over the years, but that's where mobs would meet up. So you'd have a larger ring for, celebrations. You'd all dance in there. The women would clear them. They'd come and pull all the weeds, and they'd build it up on the edge, and you'd dance over it. And over time, you get this big raised edge. You've compacted the soil in the centre from dancing on it. And then there's one entrance in and out, and that's the only way you enter and leave a bora. And then there's what we call a kipper, which is a smaller ring, and that might be 100, 120 yards away, normally by a creek, and that's where the men's business happens. So, when the boys go into manhood, that would start in the bora ring with their mothers, and then they get passed over to their uncles, and they'd go walk and go through ceremony. No women were allowed down at the kipper. So this was the large bora butt.
And they're aligned with the
and
stars.
they're aligned with the stars, yeah. I'm trying to find where I can quote that from, because there was a big study on them. And basically, I think the furthest one away has been within 60 yards. And I think to line a ring up on the ground with a star in the sky and only be 60 yards off, like there's some serious, there's something going on there that so I contemplated moving it. They even say in the history thing that it's over where I was camped, but I didn't feel it there. When I visited the spot, looking on the maps, I do a traditional hillshade layer, and it didn't seem exactly right. And then what I did was I grabbed the mountains and I drew lines between them all, and I guess what you'd call ley lines. 5 out of 7 ley lines crossed over the shed. And then I went into the hillshade layer on the shed, which gets rid of all the infrastructure and everything, and it shows a black and white lay of the land. And if you look at bora rings that are obvious, like the Sanford one, you'll see the shape of a bora and what it looks like in the hillshade layer. Where a house sits, it's a big square. It just looks like a square pad. So where this square pad was actually 3/4 round circle basically in the top left corner of this shed. And I was like, I was right, that's where it is. So I walked over there, and Steve was home. He's the owner. He's been in there for 40 odd years. And he was really nice. He let us use his showers there. He had showers, an old caravan park. So we had toilets and a shower to go to every day, fresh water. But I went over and I said, I'm not being nosy, Steve, but is it all right if I just walk up near this shed and I'll tell you why afterwards? And he goes, yeah, sure, no worries. I walked up there, all my hair, I didn't even get close to about 10 foot, all my hair stood up on end, my guts. I called out, it settled. I was like, that's it. Like, that's how I know where the bora is, and that's that connection to country that we talk about. It's always happened throughout my life. I just didn't know what it was. I came back over and we're yarning for a while, and I said, Steve, you know where the bora rings are here, eh? And he goes, yeah, I do. And I said, all right. I said, don't tell me. I'm going to tell you where I think it is. And he goes, I know exactly where it is because they bulldozed it. And I went, all right. I said, it's not up the front. People think it's up the front for some reason. I said, it's over there under that shed. And he goes, yeah, you're right. He goes, that's where the big bora was. They found a second dance area, but up the front near the cafe. My theory of that is that that's where, because the Greigers had a Bankford house there, and mob would perform, because that big area right there was a camp. That was a main campground. They'd perform and they'd get shillings or blankets, sugar, rations, stuff like that. So I think that was just a small little performance spot up there. But that main bora, he said it was exactly where I thought it was. So in the end, I thought I can't move a bora ring. That's too important. That's not for me to mess with. So I chose that Yuma ceremony, the quietness ceremony. And we built the little rock circle, one entrance in and out for people to come in and just sit in and listen to country. And while you're listening, there's so much going on. You can't quieten your brain too quick either. So you automatically start unpacking everything. And then you're listening to the destruction as well of what's going on right next door. So I think I really deep down connected and learned a lot in sitting in that space. And then I think it was around the second week mark, one of the locals come down. It was when all the fires were breaking out, all the wildfires started happening. They were getting their knickers in a knot because I had a fire going and they thought I was going to set fire to all that. But I did a lot of cultural burning work too. So I was like, mate, it's fine. We had 2 fire extinguishers, fire surround, snake mesh over the top. We made the fire really low now. It's just a log at a time. But for me, that was the best moment out of the whole thing, getting onto that sort of 2.5 week mark. When this guy pulled in and he comes stomping over, and I was like, all right, I hit record. I got the end of it. But what happened was he marched straight up with his phone out and he stopped at the edge of the circle and took photos. And I thought, this is something I've done it. I've created something here to raise awareness, and I've created something that means something. Because even this disgruntled, disrespecting person came marching over full of anger. He didn't step a foot over them rock. He didn't step into the camp, into the circle. And that was when I knew, this is it. I've done it. This is meant to be here. Yeah. And that was it then. And I just offered him a hug, and, you know, he told me to piss off or whatever, but just killed him with love, you know, as I did. And I had a few actually that would go past and give me the finger, and then by the second, third week, they were sort of waving back at me. But, and then come all the Facebook and Megan and Brett, like, I can't thank them enough, you know, for starting all the online Facebook stuff. And I think being a local traditional owner and an activist, the nicest word they've used is controversial. BJ can be a bit controversial. So they took over that whole Facebook side of things and doing the community stuff, which was really good because, I think sort of by 2.5 weeks, I was drained, I was done. It was like, almost triple what I'd sort of gone through with the thing. But the sad thing for me in my last big fight for country was that I only had about 4 mobs show up. And for me, that was a really big, hard question mark, eye-opener on just how assimilated and willing to just give up and participate in the system mob are. And it was heartbreaking, but I get it because it's easy to fall in line. It's easy to participate in this. It's a lot easier. It's harder to, like, Coods and you know, an uncle up there and stand up for your country, but go against all the norms and do what you do. But when I done the night for, okay, mob wasn't coming, and I was angry. Like, I did a little live video stream thing, and I said, I'm angry. No one's come down to stick up for country. You all love the Sunshine Coast. You love these mountains. Where are you? Where are you? Like, it was just me and Mum. And I said, light a fire at home tonight. So I did that early in the morning at 10 a.m. to give everyone plenty of time to sort of see it on Facebook, shared it around, put it on pages, everything. Like a vigil, but a fire one. Light your fire with my fire, and show them, send a picture in the comment section that you care, and that was my way of trying to find this balance that I always talk about in all this. To say, here, you don't have to stick your head out like I have. You know, you don't have to cop, you know, any backlash like I have. Just light a fire with me. And I think I got maybe 4 mob, and that was just, that really messed me up. I lost a lot of motivation, a lot of fight when I know my mum was there and I know I had support from family, but because nobody came and because no one participated in that like I thought they would, I felt alone. I know I wasn't alone, but I felt alone. And that for me was the turning point in my camp when I went, I'm probably going to wrap this up soon. If it's just me and the local community, I already know they support me, and we've had yarns and photos, and locals are bringing down fresh eggs and stuff like that, and that was there, and that was what I wanted. You know, the papers had the story then, the Guardian had interviewed us. I was like, I've done my bit, but if no one's going to stand with me, mob especially, if mob aren't going to come and stand with me, I don't think I need to be here for much longer. And that was probably the toughest decision. And 2 days after, on the exact 3-week mark that fire had been burning, was when I let it burn out. And that was really hard to do too. And I said that to Coods, like, he's have had them 2 fires going now for so long.
He's on 826.
800, yeah. And to let it burn out, or even when I went away for 5 days for an environmental thing, and I had Mum and Brett and Megan and Sharon was lovely. She spent a lot of time there with us. Come and hold that fire for me while I was gone. Coods was like, I couldn't leave for a year. He's like, I just didn't trust anyone. And I was on the phone all day, every day. Who's at the fire? Is it still going? Like, that responsibility, the whole connection to that ceremony and keeping that lit was just, it was really heavy and felt like a huge responsibility. And I was just stressing the whole time I was gone. I was so happy when I got back. And but to let it burn out, I think that definitely, I could probably say it now, was because I felt alone and didn't have mob support.
How did that feel when it finally, that last ember went out?
At first, it was really sad. So my partner, Jasmine, she's an amazing photographer, and she was getting photos of me. And I looked back and I was like thinking about like what I was thinking at the time. And it was that I felt alone without mob support. And I was umming and ahhing if I'd done enough, because the easy answer was yes, I have, because without what I'd done, I don't think there would have been as much awareness in such a short amount of time. So I was sort of questioning all that, and I was just letting it was just hot coals. And I've got a shield at the moment. It's actually in sculpture on the edge. That shield, I whittled them last couple of days and dried it in them ashes and on that fire as it cooled. Pardon me. So that shield, I was just like really trying to find a reason to put another log back on it and just weighing it all up. And I think in the end, I'd come to the conclusion that I'd done enough. That I don't think there was much more I could do, because again, it wasn't a camp where I wanted to create a camp and have it as my home. You know, like lots of mob are doing now. They're, you know, going back to country and finding their spot, and they're fighting for their spot, even within native title systems and stuff. You know, and I encourage that. I think that's the most important thing, is getting mob back home, you know, and not in their system, but in our system, and looking after country, you know. And like, I've got ideas of camp spots where I can do that, and I still argue within myself, you know, how to do that. So at the moment, I sort of feel like I'm floating. You know, it's been a big year with a breakup with my ex-partner, and then you heal through all that and through the mountain stuff and now the quarry stuff. So it's been a really full-on year. And then to look back and go, I'm still here now. Which way now? Where to from here? Because all I know at the end of the day is I really care about what's going on country around me, and carry that responsibility for it and try to navigate as best I can and just find my balance in it all. I think that's all we can do at the end of the day, is find our balance and do what we can, you know. And that's what I try to do, is just live and lead by example. And what sustainability looks like now, or, you know, all that sort of stuff is, I don't know. I'll only know in the future, I guess, how it all pans out and falls together. But from the last 12 years of walking country, you know, participating in all this, I'm not even sure I'd get away with as much as I do, you know, if it wasn't for participating in this to the point where council at least knows me, knows my personality, and knows why I'm doing what I do. You know, I sort of feel like they just sort of leave me alone, which is good. But yeah, people need to just kick their shoes off and go bush. I think at the end of the day, yeah, or if you're a saltwater person, go down the beach and dig your toes in the sand, slow down and leave your phone at home and just, you know, connect and listen to country. And it takes time. You know, like I sat there for about 3 weeks and listened to country and, you know, still trying to survive. But yeah, it's not going to just happen overnight. You know, you got to go out there and really listen.
Yeah, that's interesting and sad, very sad what's happening with the quarry. And we'll be sharing some links in this podcast where people can get more information and, you know, support the whole re-education, let's say, not the fight, but the re-education and the protection of those mountains. And yeah, I want to thank you personally for like the work that you're doing, the awareness, and being up with Coods up at W&J country up there and their mob, and understanding what goes into doing that, you know, like putting all your personal stuff on the side and just being out there, you know, whatever's going to come at you, rolling with the punches. It takes a lot of courage. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not easy at all.
I was wondering maybe if there's a final word we could, you know, close this yarn on around, I don't know, getting on country, like you're saying, kick your shoes off, or anything you want to share with people out there.
I just think, I don't know if you call it a final word, but I've been, you know, unpacking this within myself a lot lately in realising that from growing up assimilated to owning my own coffee shop, to having fast cars, to having my own business and losing it all, and COVID, weighing it all up. And at the end of the day, I think that we're a little bit too worried about ourselves within this big system. And don't get me wrong, like, I think we're important. We all play important parts and roles in this. But I think one thing, again, for me personally, I've come to accept, because I've never found that, like, you know, yeah, what do you want to be when you get older? You know, what do you want to do when you grow up? And for me, recently, I've just come to really accept that it's not about me. It's all about flora and fauna and living with country and not on it. And I felt like a bit of weight lifted, you know, even maybe within the responsibility of myself as a culture man to care for country, and in acknowledging that and accepting that I'm only here for a minute and it's my job to look after country. That means flora and fauna, put country first. And if I can, as I said, just live and lead by example and do my bit in caring for country, at the end of the day, I've played my part, and letting go of all that other stuff. Anything else will be a bonus. And, you know, for me, that's what it's come down to, and that's all I've been doing lately. You know, I'll do the odd job, the odd welcome, or, you know, I try to, as I said, find my balance. My work now is leaned more towards environmental ecology sort of stuff, so I do like that roost walks and tours and firework for country. It's sort of all, now it's steered away from that big Western dream of a house and a fast car and having my own business to, this is what's important, this is what we got to do. Otherwise, there's just going to be nothing for our future generations. It's going to be horrible. You know, look what's happened in 285 years. Like, if we don't start changing the way it is now, it's just not going to be good. So, can't change 8 million points of view, but if you live and lead by example, and one or two pick up on that, and then they do what they do, and then another couple, that little domino effect, maybe we can have some change and a better future for our kids. So, yeah, I think that's all I've come to accept really lately, and that's all I'm doing is moving forward, is looking after country and participating in that in the best way that sits right with my spirit. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, brother. I think it's a good message for everyone out there. Just, you can only do your part, you know, and not to carry that load that sometimes society puts on us of global warming, or we're going to change the world or anything. But if we all do our part, then we're going to see a change, and it comes down to that discipline and self-respect, and yeah, doing that part. So,
and you'll know that you did the right thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all that matters. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thank you, BJ, for being here and taking the time to share a bit about your culture and your story, and yeah, we always appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. Your way.
Somos la vida, somos la luna, la estrella y el mar.